Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Hope everybody's having a great night. Welcome to the channel. My name is Ricky. America first. F the rest. Use your imagination for what the F stands for. Do I got a good one for you tonight? So, apparently, calling out the fact that Jeffrey Epstein was a known Mossad agent funded by Zionist donors and ran one of the biggest blackmail and sex trafficking operations ever, where girls as young as 9 years old were trafficked and abused. Calling out the fact that it was funded by Philadelphia. We're going to use code words. Calling out that it was funded by Philadelphia and Philadelphia supporters, and calling out the fact that he worked for, let's call them the Marshmallows. That's the intelligence agency of Philadelphia, the Marshmallows. Bringing that to light and asking that question of why are we not addressing it? Well, apparently that's anti-Philadelphia. All right. So, in my world, I think words have meaning, right? So, when you say that somebody is Jewish, that's somebody that is of the Jewish faith. When you say somebody is Christian, that is somebody of the Christian faith. When you call somebody a Zionist, when somebody says they're a Zionist, they believe that the land of Israel is the land promised by God to the Jewish people. Somehow you have Christian Zionists, which really makes no sense, completely contradicts itself. But the people that go to these mega churches, Calvary, and people that follow Turning Point, they somehow buy into this narrative that there is something called Judeo-Christian, when the fact is that's a made up term. It's a made up term to manipulate people of the Christian faith to buy into the Zionist movement. Ask a Jewish person or ask a Zionist where they believe Jesus is and what happened to him when he died. Or refer to the Talmud and see what the Talmud says about Jesus Christ. And you will see that Judeo-Christian values, they do not align. They are not the same. So this whole thing started by a post I put up on Facebook. And let me see if I could bring this up. See if I do this right. Why isn't it there? There it is. Okay. So, as the post states, let's address the elephant in the room. He worked for the Marshmallows. All of the children trafficked were trafficked at the behest of the Philadelphia government. Where does the line get drawn? Does everybody pretend like this isn't the truth? Or is it somehow anti-Semitic to point this out? I'm curious to see how people justify it. So, the first post and the thing that I'm going to focus on and the responses are the responses coming from the people that support Zionism. Because it blows my mind that the thing that these people care about more than the fact that our greatest ally infiltrated, compromised politicians in both parties, hot people in Hollywood, pastors, scientists, people in academia. All of these people were compromised. All of these people were American. None of these people that were compromised were Jewish. None of them were Jewish. None of them were Zionists. They compromised a sitting president of the United States. And if you think I'm talking about Donald Trump, I'm not. I'm actually talking about Bill Clinton and the Monica Lewinsky scandal. Because if you don't know, Epstein visited the White House 17 times while Clinton was in office, while the Oslo Accords were being negotiated. The Monica Lewinsky scandal broke. And the recordings of the conversations between Monica Lewinsky and Bill Clinton were held over Bill Clinton's head as leverage to force him to ease up on the concessions that he was giving the Palestinians during the Oslo Accords. But we'll come back to that. So, post on Facebook, we addressed the fact that Epstein was funded by Philadelphia and he was a marshmallow. Here's the first reply. The elephant in the room is that the man in the highest office of power in our country is named more times than Jesus is in the Bible. Why don't you refocus on what's going on here? What continues to go on here, because it's easier to blame Jewish people. It's easier to point your finger at the marshmallows as if you had some kind of inside line. Well, you're going to get an education on the inside line to Jeffrey Epstein, Philadelphia, the marshmallows, the blackmail. I'm going to give you a lesson since you think you know what you're talking about. And obviously you don't. Or maybe you do, and you're just playing the victim. So let me scroll through these again. This is the same woman. When I need an education, I'll certainly reach out to you. Until then, I'll depend on my formal education that I receive throughout life. I love how you young people think you're here to educate when what you actually do is buy bullshit and sell rhetoric. I guessed that the formal education that you received in your life is different than the formal education that I received through my life experiences, or the people that replied to these posts received in their life experiences. Your life experiences are better for some reason. This is the same woman. What special education gives you the ability to decide what I think? I bet you don't even have a college education. I would bet you spend most of your time on YouTube chasing rabbit hole conspiracies that allow you to blame the Jews for your failures to achieve in life. Because that's what people are doing, right? Sitting at home, crying, blaming Jewish people for their failures in life. They're not worried about how they're going to put food on the table, how home prices are completely unrealistic. The average American doesn't have $800 in the bank to fix their car. Nobody's getting married anymore because people can't afford it. The average age of the new homeowner of a new home buyer in our country is 40 years old. But instead of worrying about how to get through life and provide for ourselves, our families, and work and contribute to our community, apparently we're all at home blaming Jewish people. Let's continue. Hmm. What do you know about my age or education? Nothing. Zionists aren't Jews, but read the Post. He's not talking about Zionists. He's talking about mushrooms. I said mushrooms. He's talking about marshmallows. Dare I say, the marshmallows are Jewish? Or will you need to educate me? The obsession with blaming the marshmallows and blaming Jewish people is one and the same, and it's utterly ridiculous to suggest otherwise. That's like blaming Christian people for what the CIA does. Does that make any sense? That doesn't make any sense, right? I don't understand how criticizing an intelligence agency of a country that we call our greatest ally that compromised some of the most influential people in America by having children trafficked and taken advantage of in the worst ways possible. How is that the same thing as blaming it on Jewish people? Jewish people were never brought up in the Post. The Post was about how Epstein worked for Philadelphia and was an agent of the marshmallows. Jewish and Judaism was never brought up. Being Jewish, working for the marshmallows, and working for the government of Philadelphia are not the same thing. But apparently, if you criticize one, you criticize all. I am anti Semitic for pointing out the fact that Epstein did this for them. Because holding them accountable for this is blaming all Jewish people. But it gets better. This is the icing on the cake. And this is the same woman speaking about me. I honestly believe he's a good guy who doesn't grasp the magnitude of what he's saying when he's speaking to people who are Jewish. My children are genetically overwhelmingly Ashkenazi Jews, according to Ancestry.com. I explained to Ricky the other day that he's the type of person that's making me fear for my children. I don't believe that's who he is, and that's why I become so persistent on his page. Are you serious? Like, are people that brainwashed that by criticizing the government of Philadelphia and pointing out the fact that Epstein worked for them, I am somehow making this woman fear for her children's safety. Now, listen, I'll let you guys be the judge of that. Please comment below and tell me if I'm out of my mind or if she's right. Would you fear for your children's safety by me pointing this out? I'd fear for my children's safety more that they didn't get trafficked, right? Wouldn't that be a bigger concern? But I am the type of person that makes her fear for her children's safety. I can assure everybody watching this channel that I am a threat to nobody's children's safety. The entire point of pushing the Epstein story is to get accountability for the children that were taken advantage of. The kids that had their innocence stolen. The kids that ended up offing themselves because of this. The horrible things that happened to these girls. That's why we're pushing this story. That's why this isn't going away. Because we want accountability. We were promised accountability, and we're getting none. This administration has completely dropped the ball. And if it's not for people, if it isn't for people like me, like Ian Carroll, Ian Went, Bobby Sauce, Candace Owens, Ian Carroll, James Lee, if it wasn't for people like us that won't drop this story, nobody will be held accountable for what happened to those kids. This entire thing is about putting these people away, throwing them in the wood chipper. I honestly can't believe that somebody would have the balls to say that they fear for their children's safety because I pointed out the fact that nobody wants to acknowledge who Epstein really worked for. And if I'm an anti Semite for pointing that out, then I'm fine with that label. I'm fine with being called that. Because all I did was point out what is now proven to be true by the files that were released from the DOJ, the same files that you said Trump is referred to more than Jesus is in the Bible. Those same files prove that he was an asset of Philadelphia and an asset of the marshmallows. So now what we're going to do is we're going to get a little education lesson on Epstein and his ties to Philadelphia and the marshmallows. So let's go through. I have an outline here. So I'll pull up the outline so you guys can read and follow along with what I'm looking at. Not gonna go through the whole thing. I'm just gonna point out the key highlights. I feel like I probably went a little longer on my rant than I wanted to. So I'm just going to touch the highlights of the key points in why Epstein worked for Philadelphia and why he was an agent of the marshmallows. So 1974, he started at the Dalton School teaching math. By 1976, he was out because he had inappropriate relations with a student. He also had no college degree and no credentials. But somehow he is connected with Alan Greenberg, the CEO of Bear Stearns. He rose rapidly through the firm, but left in 81 for they thought there was insider trading. He never got caught, but it raised red flags. At this point, he is very involved with Zionist donors, pro-Israel lobbying people. Yeah, we'll keep going. Anand Khashoggi, Saudi arms dealer at the center of the Iran-Contra affair. Somehow, Epstein was introduced to Anand Khashoggi. This brought Epstein into intelligence operations that were linked to the CIA, with Arrow Air and Southern Air Transport that were bringing in covert shipments of weapons. And this is where he's trained by Anand Khashoggi in blackmail, tradecraft. This is basically where he goes to spy school over the mid 80s. In 91, Robert Maxwell passes away, who died by supposedly falling off his yacht. Now, when Maxwell passes away, he is buried in Israel and given full Israeli honors, a military funeral, and they acknowledge the fact that Robert Maxwell was an agent for the Marshmallows. After Robert died, Ghislaine gets in. What's up, Apollo? Sorry, my dog's bugging out. Ghislaine and Epstein are introduced, and Ghislaine at the time pretty much becomes his handler. This is where he goes from opportunistic financial schemes to a sex trafficking blackmail operation. Ari Ben-Menashe, who was a retired Mossad agent, stated publicly that Epstein inherited Robert Maxwell's playbook and was recruited for Philadelphia intelligence operations. In 2020, FBI reports alleged spy training under Ehud Barak, funneling money into the marshmallows via intermediaries tied to Philadelphia intelligence. In the mid 80s, he somehow gets involved with Leslie Wexner, who is a mega rich. Oh, stop. Get up. Oh, come on, get up. Get up. Sorry. Leslie Wexner, who's a mega rich Zionist force, donating to pro Philadelphia PACs, has the Wexner Foundation. Let's see if I could pull that up, actually. Let's see if... where is that? Sorry, guys. I am still learning to work my way around StreamYard. So let's go to, let's go here. The Wexner Foundation, strengthening leadership in the North American Jewish community and the state of Philadelphia. Leadership initiatives for professionals, volunteers, leaders, alumni summits, Wexner was a very, very, very powerful, rich American Jew who used his money to push Philadelphia's agenda in our country. All right. Let's go back to my outline. In 1991, Wexner passes away. Jeffrey is granted power of attorney over all of his wealth, acquiring his New York City mansion, which was in the files described as blackmail headquarters with hidden cameras all over the house. Channeling millions of dollars into Philadelphia leadership programs, AIPAC lobbying, academic institution, molding U.S. policy for Philadelphia. In 1991, He co-founds the Mega Group with Charles Bronfman. Edward Bronfman, who is the heir to Seagram's and the leader of the World Jewish Congress. Steven Spielberg and Larry Tisch. The group states that it's about philanthropy, but it is well documented in the files about their links to Philadelphia's intelligence speculatively, it allowed for the Zionist network to outsource operations to Epstein, channeling covert campaigns, and the positioning through Wexner's estate allowed him to merge the finances of that man and the operation side of things. He had all the money in the world to do what he wanted to do. And it was all because of Philadelphia and Philadelphia mega donors. In the late 90s, the Clinton-Lewinsky affair popped off. Jeffrey Epstein visited the White House a total of 17 times that we know about. During the Lewinsky scandal, the Oslo Accords were happening, which Clinton was brokering. Benjamin Netanyahu, who was the leader of the Likud party at the time, was very against the concessions that Bill Clinton was giving the Palestinians. So much so that he used the Monica Lewinsky phone recordings, as leverage over Bill Clinton to ease off some of the concessions that he was giving the Palestinians. Now, one might ask, how did Benjamin Netanyahu get recordings of Bill Clinton and Monica Lewinsky doing the nasty over the phone? Think about that for a minute. How would Netanyahu have gotten those recordings? Do you think Monica Lewinsky just decided to reach out to the leader of the Likud party in Israel and say, I have these tapes? Use them as leverage over Bill? Or do you think it's more likely that Philadelphia and the Marshmallows were running an intelligence operation against a sitting president of the United States to advance their policy and their agenda in the Oslo Accords? A sitting president of the United States was actively being blackmailed by the government of Philadelphia, the Marshmallows, and Jeffrey Epstein. Then we can go into Jonathan Pollard. He was arrested in 1985, charged with espionage, gave thousands and thousands of documents to the Philadelphia government, the Marshmallows. He was sentenced to life in prison. He ended up doing 30 years. He was granted parole by Obama and then pardoned by Donald Trump. Go figure. Because we're more concerned about making Philadelphia great again than we are making America great again. Which, in case you haven't noticed, MAGA is dead. And anybody that is still rooting on MAGA is just as bad as the Zionists. And just as bad as the people on the left. The people on the right are just as brainwashed as the people on the left. And until our country realizes that none of these politicians, except maybe for Thomas Massie, who Trump is trying to primary, because we wouldn't have these files without him, Marjorie Taylor Greene, James Fishback if he gets in office, and that's a big if. But until we have politicians that put Americans first, our country will never get better. Clint from Liberty Lockdown said it best. He's like, it's like the ship is sinking and the politicians know the ship is sinking. So they're all just looting whatever they can before the ship goes down. And that is the best explanation that I've heard for what's going on right now in our country. And it seems like nobody's concerned about fixing it. We're more concerned about going to war with Iran for Philadelphia, taking over Greenland, Maduro, which the whole thing looked staged. If the guy probably cut a deal, Trump needed a win in the public's eye. The guy was filmed with 12 different outfits in 24 hours. He's filmed like that with his DEA agents. The guy doesn't look like he's concerned about arms trafficking and narco-terrorism charges. He's probably on an island somewhere, or he will be. Or maybe he'll be Epstein. Who knows? In the late 1990s, Epstein started funding the EDGE conferences, which is basically the predecessor to the TED organization, which was its philanthropists, guys in the tech sector, guys in the science and academia sector, academics, politicians, anybody that's influential. And Epstein funded this entire thing because it gave him access to all sorts of goodies. All sorts of goodies for Philadelphia. New technology, new science, ways to push policy in America. So in the mid 1990s, he is connected with Ehud Barak. Ehud Barak was a prime minister of Israel. He was Philadelphia, sorry. The head of the IDF. Basically, he held every important political position in that country. Emails show collaboration on Philadelphia drone startups, innovations on malaria, the sale of a U.S. oil tycoon's empire. Ehud was such a frequent visitor to his apartment in New York that the staff at the apartment nicknamed it Ehud's apartment. And this continued post 2008 conviction, where Jeffrey got a sweetheart deal because he worked for intelligence. There's recordings discussing demographic strategies, flooding Israel with Russian immigrants to counter the Palestinians' population growth. He invested in Barak's associated tech companies from Unit 8200, which is Unit 8200 is basically the most advanced cyber warfare outfit in the world. I don't think people realize how much technology comes from Philadelphia. And just for a side note, I know a lot of people use VPNs for privacy. Well, Philadelphia now owns 4 of the 8 largest VPNs, and their laws are different than in the United States. So they don't need a warrant to go in and see what you are doing. So if you don't think that you're being tracked online, by Philadelphia, I could almost guarantee you that you are. You should probably take a look at what what VPN you're using and who owns it. Oh man. FBI reports labeling him a marshmallow co-optee. With Alan Dershowitz relaying phone calls to Philadelphia intelligence for Epstein. The non-prosecution deal. 2008, he had a non-prosecution agreement no ordinary citizen could get. Victims were silenced via gag orders. Evidence was buried in sealed files. Despite 30 underage accusers detailing abuse to federal agents. Now, if that wasn't enough information to prove the case that Epstein worked for Philadelphia and was an agent of the Marshmallows, then you're retarded. You have to be. Or you are that brainwashed that because Trump is in the files, just like Bill Clinton, just like Bill Gates, just like Alan Dershowitz, just like Peter Thiel, just like Elon Musk. All these people are in the files. But because Trump is in them, that's the biggest concern. Not the fact that all these girls were trafficked. Some of these girls have killed themselves. That victims' names aren't getting redacted, but the perpetrators' names are. I mean, what do you think the American public would say if they knew that Philadelphia was blackmailing a sitting president of the United States in Bill Clinton? What other leverage could they have? They knew about 9/11. They sent people here to film it. You think maybe if they didn't do it themselves, that they know who really did? Could you imagine if they had proof that it was really Dick Cheney and Bush who was responsible for 9/11? What that would do to the American public? What that would do to our country? You want to talk about the ultimate blackmail? It would rip our country apart. I didn't want to have to make this video. I didn't want to have to go down this road. I didn't want to have to attack anybody. I I I don't want to do that. But when you come out and you're more concerned about the fact that Trump is in the files than there being no accountability whatsoever, and no concern about who funded all this blackmail and all these operations, and why our country is doing what they're doing now for Philadelphia. Because as a former Trump supporter, I know that most of us who were Trump supporters are all saying the same thing. What the fuck happened? And it's this. This is what happened. Now, whether they're holding something over his head that he did, or they're holding something else over his head that he didn't do, but it's information that would harm our country, regardless, it's pretty obvious that they have our country by the balls. APAC has a 98% success rate when they back a candidate. 98%. You know what? We're gonna pull that up right now, actually, before I go off, because I want you to see that. I want you to see that. Um, hmm. Okay, we'll go here. What is APAC's success rate when backing a candidate? I spelled that wrong. '22 election cycle, APAC PAC report reported that 98% of candidates it endorsed won their general election races. AIPAC's own election reporting claimed that AIPAC endorsed candidates won in every race where they were on the ballot, 322 wins during the 2024 cycle. A near 100% win rate for endorsed candidates. So the American voter means nothing. Because I guarantee you that there are candidates that ran that the American voter voted for that should have been elected and should have been in office, but because AIPAC has 100% success rate in backing candidates, the people that we wanted in office didn't get in office. That is why our country needs to change. That is why our country needs to go for America first. That is why our policies need to change. That is why we need to stop supporting Philadelphia. And when you tell me I need to worry about what's going on here at home, that's exactly what I'm doing. Trying to make sure those kids that you think that you fear for your kids because of me, I'm trying to make sure your kids have a better life and your kids could afford to buy a home and they're not buying their first home at the age of 40 and they're not having 50-year mortgages and they can afford to put food on the table. And there's accountability for people that are getting sex trafficked. And some of these people are brought to justice. Nobody's sitting at home crying, blaming it on the Jews. Charlie Kirk said it best, right? Before he got killed, that he had to leave the pro-Israel cause because the donors fit into all the stereotypes. And everything that you replied to me on Facebook fit into that stereotype. So here's your conspiracy theory. Since it's a conspiracy theory that he worked for Philadelphia, and you're more concerned about Trump being in the files than getting justice for those kids. I hope this gives everybody something to think about. And if you're one of these people that are more concerned about the halftime show and Bad Bunny playing at the Super Bowl than you are about getting answers to what actually happened here, you are part of the problem. People need to get their priorities straight. And the American public needs to get their shit together. And we need to start putting people in office that give a shit about us and aren't beholden to their donors. We need to register AIPAC as a foreign lobby because somehow they got that off too, right? If you guys stuck with me through this entire video, I appreciate it. I know I've been going on for a while. I got extremely worked up over the post on Facebook, so I had to do a deep dive. And that's what I did. So you can find me at AmericaFirst FTR on all social media platforms: Twitter, Facebook, X, whatever you want to call it, YouTube. Like, subscribe, help support me, help support America First, help support getting justice for these kids, some accountability, some people in office that actually care about us. That's what I'm about. And that's what this channel is about. And that's what this channel is for. I'm not an anti-Semite because I pointed out the fact that Epstein worked for intelligence of our greatest ally and blackmailed one, possibly two sitting presidents of the United States. I'm an American that cares about America, and I want America to be put first. And it seems like we're being put last all the time. And we're tired of it. And Donald Trump dropped the ball. One of the biggest blunders in political history. That man had the House, the Senate, had everything. Nobody cares about the midterms. Not people that are actually paying attention to what's going on. The voting system in our country doesn't mean anything. AIPAC's got 100% voting record. They control who goes into office, not us. Our votes don't matter. It's a joke. Something needs to change. Because our country is driving 1,000 miles an hour off a cliff. And it's like it's happening in slow motion. Sorry for the doom and gloom. I'm Ricky. This is America First FTR. Hope everybody has a good night. Thank you for watching. Drop a like, subscribe, comment down below. You guys know the deal. Help support the channel. Help get me out there. Let's get some America First candidates out there. Like the video, share it. Help me run this thing up. Help me blow up. Because the more we get the word out and the more people we bring to the America First movement, the more leverage we have and the better chance we have to fix our country. Our country's going to be fixed from the ground up, not from the top down. So, like I said, the American public needs to get their priorities in order and get their shit in gear. Otherwise, 10 years, we're not going to have a dollar. We're not going to have a country anymore. The dollar's going to be worthless. Inflation's going to be worse. Nobody's going to be able to afford anything. The homeless crisis is going to be out of control. It's time we make a change. Charlie Kirk got shot for using his voice. And that was the inspiration for me to start using mine. And that's what I'm going to do. So I hope all you guys have a good night. Let me know if I'm an anti-Semite. If you agree, you disagree, whatever. I don't really care. But I am going to let my voice be heard. Because that's my right as an American. Hope everybody has a good night. I'll catch you on the next one.